What happens when a bad theology, wrapped in fictional eschatology, inspired by Christian nationalism and left behind fiction, take over the government and becomes the blueprint that shapes and guides government departments, such as the Homeland Security, Department of Defense, or as it is called today, Department of War, Pentagon, and so on? I was thinking about this question even before Trump, energized by white Christians, by MAGA Christians, and by Christian nationalists, took over the US government. In the article, The Danger of Dispensationalism in the Middle East, published by the Huffington Post, now called HuffPost, in February 2011, I asked a similar question, almost rhetorically. Imagine the potential damage to the international affairs if the formation and implementation of the US foreign policies were to be in the hands of the government leaders who are believers in the dispensational theology. So, 15 years ago, I wrote as I was reflecting on a conversation that took place in a local Starbucks at the time. This is what I wrote as I was reflecting on those conversations. Not surprisingly, millions of believers across denominational lines, watching the spreading of revolts in neighborhoods of the Middle East, are interpreting every new development guided by the questions: what will happen to Israel? Are the current events playing into the hands of emerging Antichrist? Should America, as a leading Christian nation, be a guardian of the fulfillment of the end-time prophecies at the international level, especially in regard to Israel? Or should the church be ready for the rapture any moment now? This is how I was reflecting, following some of those conversations that at the time in 2011 I listened to or even took part in a local Starbucks. It seems that the thoughts of provoking Armageddon in the Middle East and desire by many militant evangelicals even to join in the most physical fight for God and his kingdom and on the side of his army was very much alive even 15 years ago. Alas, almost 20 years ago, at the time when I moved to America, I found conservative radio talk shows, certainly those on the conservative radio stations accessible in Texas, quite amusing because political and eschatological speculations used to be frequently featured. Even 20 years ago. It should not surprise us then if we are witnessing today how numerous sources of information have literally exploded trying to respond to the news of 1 week ago that apparently some U.S. Army officers are now briefing their units and spreading the idea that Iran war is a part of God's plan and that the President Donald Trump was anointed by Jesus to light the signal fire in Iran to cause Armageddon and mark his return to earth. So was reported by Jonathan Larson on Substack on March the 2nd, 2026, and by the number of other media sources. Considering the spiritual makeup of the current U.S. leadership, including the president's cabinet members and other staff, and the current makeup of the Republicans in Congress and Senate, it was only a matter of time before the news of the kind will break out. Take, for example, the set of the most recent viral video recordings featuring a group of 20 Trump's prayer warriors piously overshadowing the president in the Oval Office while praying for his and military protection and success in the context of the only recently unleashed relentless military aggression against Iran. Just a quick look at the spiritual leaders encircling Trump on the occasion reveals that most of them belong to radical, macho, masculine, militant brands of Christian nationalism, just as well as the most of Trump's hand-picked cabinet members, associates, and staff members. But we need to say more about this case. This was neither the first one, nor the last gathering of Trump's prayer warriors. What was unique about it, though, was that it happened in the context of the war Trump and Netanyahu unleashed on Iran just over 1 week ago. And this makes a difference and takes away the legitimacy from this prayer gathering. Baptist Press Global published its very useful report of the event on March the 6th, 2026. It says, in what has become an annual ritual, evangelical leaders gathered around President Donald Trump in the Oval Office on March the 5th and prayed over him and for the U.S. success in the war against Iran. The photo prayer time was organized by Paula White Cain, head of the White House Office of Faith and the Health and Wealth televangelist. This is how Baptist Press Global is reporting, and continues. Tom Mullins, the founding pastor of Christ Fellowship, a megachurch in Florida, prayed to God on behalf of Trump. He said, I pray for your grace and your protection over him. I pray for the grace and your protection over our troops and over all our men and women serving in our armed forces. And Father, we just pray you continue to give our president the strength he needs to lead our nation as we come back to be one nation under God. And Baptist Press Global also presents Ralph Reed of Faith and Freedom Coalition, one of the participants in this prayer meeting, who portrayed the prayer session as asking God's support for U.S. troops in the attacks on Iran. He said, I am grateful to President Trump for his courageous decision to strike the terrorist regime in Iran. I am honored to pray for him and our armed forces at the White House. May God grant victory and freedom for the Iranian people. And Samuel Rodriguez, president of the National Hispanic Christian Leadership Conference, who was also present, he wrote on X, what made the moment especially meaningful was the context in which it occurred. As the president continues to serve as commander-in-chief during Operation Epic Fury, with U.S. forces targeting Iranian regime infrastructure and missile capabilities, the Oval Office was open for prayer. Even in the midst of global conflict and immense responsibility, we pause to see God's wisdom and covering. Leadership at the highest level requires humility, discernment, and dependence upon God. We prayed for the presidents, for the United States, for our military personnel, and for peace through strength in this critical hour. Samuel Rodriguez continues, moments like this serve as a powerful reminder that faith still has a place in the highest rooms of leadership and that prayer remains one of the most meaningful acts we can offer on behalf of our nation. This is how the Baptist Press International presented this prayer gathering, and apparently the reasons and the purposes why those 20 people got together around Donald Trump, placed their hands on him, and prayed for the success of the war against Iran. If a group of people got around the president to pray in some genuine circumstances when this country was attacked, or even involved in a war with a noble purpose of genuinely defending another nation that was or is under attack, this prayer would have had and could have had a different flavor. But we need to remember that this is how a group of 20 Trump's prayer warriors, all of them Christian MAGA nationalists by conviction, prayed for a divine protection over and success over the regime which launched a premeditated and unprovoked military aggression by choice against a sovereign country in the middle of negotiations. This is how they were trying to twist God's hand and act as if they own God himself, as if God himself was there to endorse their unjust, holy war, supposedly holy war agenda. But the story does not end here. A few more things were happening at the same time, and all of those within the last week or so. And all of them are about the quiet parts, those parts that until recently they were spoken behind the closed doors, and now they are being loudly declared. Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State and devout and evangelizing Christian who does not seem to see a problem playing a central role in building up and delivering policies and actions that call for brutality in their execution, tried to explain and justify in his own way the context of American and Israeli aggression on Iran, in a way that shows that he does not see or does not want to see that the U.S. foreign policy and relations are becoming just as jihadist as of those of his enemies. He said to a group of reporters the other day that the entire Iranian regime is led by radical clerics who make decisions on the basis of theology, their view of theology, which is an apocalyptic view. About the same time, Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the United States House of Representatives, reasoned in a similar manner as he delivered his conceited analysis of the Iranian regime. They say the quiet parts loud. They wanted to wipe Israel off the face of the earth, and they would like to take us as well. They follow a misguided religion, says Mike Johnson, and there is no way to appease them. One wonders indeed, who is the one who is saying actually at this time the quiet stuff loud? And the United States Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, of whom we have to say a little bit more, spoke the quiet part loud too during a recent press meeting when with so many arrogant, conceited and bullying words he stated the character of cruelty by which he is fighting the war against Iran. When asked about what is his prayer like for servicemen who are undoubtedly placed in the harm's way, he proudly spoke about himself praying for a biblical vision to navigate and win this conflict. He said, I'm praying, my wife is praying, my family prays for them. I'm praying simply for a biblical wisdom to see what is right and for the courage to do it. Apparently, according to the War Secretary, this is how one fights divinely anointed and appointed, yet brutal and uncalled for aggression against Iran. In fact, on the side of Christendom, Pete Hegseth probably models the best the evolution of aggressive jihadist Christian nationalism that calls for the blood of infidels in the name of God. In his article published by The Guardian on Sunday, March the 8th, David Smith describes him as a very dangerous but incompetent person. The man who is, according to his own words, praying for biblical wisdom so that he knows how to lead American war against Iran, spoke also about the Iranian leaders. Pete Hegseth said, they are toast and they know it, or at least soon enough they will know it. America is winning decisively, devastatingly, and without mercy. This is how The Guardian describes Pete Hegseth, the crusader for Christ, and continues. Photos have shown him bearing 2 tattoos associated with crusader imagery. One depicts the Jerusalem cross, a cluster of 5 crosses long connected to medieval crusader iconography, on his chest. Nearby is an image of sword accompanied by the Latin phrase Deus vult, meaning God wills it, a slogan historically linked to the Crusades and revived in recent years by all kinds of far-right groups. It appeared on the clothing and flags carried by some participants in the January 6 Capitol attack. In his 2020 book, American Crusade, Hegseth wrote that those who benefit from Western civilization should thank a crusader. The book suggests that democratic politics alone may not suffice to achieve the goals of his political allies, declaring, "Warning is a weapon, but it is not enough. We don't want to fight, but like our fellow Christians 1,000 years ago, we must." There have been reports of more troubling behavior too. The New Yorker reported that a colleague at Concerned Veterans for America complained that he and another man, and man it says he meaning Pete Hegseth, repeatedly shouted, "Kill all Muslims," during a drunken episode at a bar while traveling for work. Doug Pagitt, a pastor and executive director of the progressive Christian group What Common Good, says, "It seems to me that Pete Hegseth has a worldview which is contorted toward thinking that this administration has a particular divine calling. He believes, because he said it, that God has uniquely ordained Donald Trump and those that he chooses to accomplish very specific purposes in the world. Pete's own version of Christianity is one that is built around a certain Christian advancement that comes through the domination of the governments of nations. He believes that not only is the military at his disposal to use for his purposes, but it is there to fulfill God's agenda for the world." So this is how The Guardian of Sunday, March the 8th described Pete Hegseth, the U.S. War Secretary, and provides a very worrying picture. Much more needs to be said and will be said on this and related challenges and issues, but so much would suffice for the time being because we only have a moment to share a brief warning and personal advice. One is weaponized religion, and I'm specifically thinking this time about Christian religion, weaponized Christian faith, weaponized Christian theology, especially if it is of eschatological flavor, a dangerous thing. Why is it so dangerous when church/religion and state blend together in the pursuit of conquering a nation, or maybe even the world? Because such crusades always appear under the pretense that they are actually defending and fighting for the moral purity of the nations, or that they are defending the kingdom of God here on earth, or that they're helping Jesus to establish his reign on earth. But the outcome has always been actually the variation of one and the same outcome. Umberto Eco, Italian writer, philosopher, and social commentator, warned a number of years ago. He said, "People are never so completely and enthusiastically evil as when they act out of religious conviction." And the Bible cautions us likewise. Actually, the very words of Jesus from the Gospel of John, chapter 16, verse 2, are warning us. "The time is coming when anyone who kills you will think that they are offering a service to God." And Christian author Gregory Boyd, in his book, The Myth of Christian Nation, offers probably the most pointed and serious warning. I would like you to listen to this warning. And I would like you to think of the people we have mentioned, listed in this podcast. People who are today in the leading places and positions of this country. People who are at this time deciding about the life and death, not only of American citizens, but also internationally. Think about those people we have listed in the context of the warning issued by Gregory Boyd, who writes, "A citizen of God," Gregory Boyd is warning us, "could and should argue that the Christianized version of the kingdom of the world is actually the worst version the world has ever seen. For it is precisely this version that has done the most harm to the kingdom of God. Not only has it tortured and killed, as worldly kingdoms often do, it has done so under Christian banner, under Christ's banner. If violence and oppression are demonic, violence and oppression in Jesus' name are all the more so. The Christian church has thereby disgraced Christ's name by associating his kingdom with the crimes it has committed for centuries. And I will add, the crimes it is committing today. Thus, in the name of winning the world for Jesus Christ, the church has often become the main obstacle to faith in Jesus Christ. Let me share my personal, maybe, advice, and I will be going back to my article originally written in 2011. And I will share a conclusion of that article, somewhat modified, slightly modified, to speak to our situation today. So, as for me, I intend to have my eyes open. I pray for discernment as I read my Bible. I am looking forward to the appearing of the Lord and the fruition of his kingdom with no limits and no boundaries set by human agendas. Meanwhile, I continue to empathize with the suffering, tortured, abused, and killed people at the hands of criminal leaders. And I pray for the genuine peace and freedom in Iran and elsewhere in the Middle East and across the world and in this country, the country of America. I share in the hope of those who are looking forward to seeing the Middle East and the countries in the region flourishing in democracy, civil society that is built on the rule of law, respect for human rights and equality and dignity, religious freedom included, for all their citizens. And I do pray for the restoration of democracy in America, because democracy has been seriously attacked. And I pray for the same for the rest of the world, which is at this time being destabilized by the very players who have brought this war upon Iran at this time. But should anything go wrong, I want to keep remembering that God is in control anyway, and that ultimately his purposes and his kingdom, as revealed in Jesus and not in Christian nationalism, will prevail. That's all for today, and I'll be speaking to you again soon. Meanwhile, if you think that the programs and podcasts such as this one are useful, needed, if you would like to hear more, if you would like the word to spread, then I would like you to do something that might look even very childish, but it seems the way those algorithms are arranged today, this is what helps our channels grow. And this is that you demonstrate that you really think that people need to hear it and see it by liking, by registering, by commenting, sharing some good, positive comments, Apparently, if you are doing this, this does help bringing attention to our work further and beyond what we have at this time. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll be speaking to you again very soon. God bless you. Think, pray, share, reflect.